clarified. We'll move to question time, and I call Senator Nampijinpa Price.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator McCarthy. Minister, while your government was distracted by The Voice, routine business in the portfolio fell away. The Community Development Program will not be replaced this term. Aboriginal Benefits Account grants were paused, and grants from Aboriginal Investment NT have spent more time closed than open. The Productivity Commission in July last year highlighted how the government does not even know how many Indigenous communities have access to clean drinking water. Minister, why are practical outcomes for Indigenous Australians not a priority for your government?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinpa Price. Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Price for the question. And it's actually incorrect, President. We have started the remote jobs program across many regions of Australia. In fact, we said when we came into government that we would get rid of the Community Development Program, which is what we've spent the last 2 years doing in terms of a transition, and we said we would do that. We've done that in partnership, President, with the First Nations Working Group in terms of remote jobs. And we know that the program that we're putting forward will create meaningful jobs in remote communities. In fact, I've just been having a look at the programs across in Western Australia and the Kimberleys, and also in Central Australia around the Alice Springs town camps. And so when I visited Kununurra just a few weeks ago, I had the privilege to meet participants who are already benefiting from this program. I met Nathalia, who's working at the Warrangurri Radio and doing a terrific job there. She works in all aspects of the station, including presenting a show on staying healthy in the Kimberley, and she's already a role model, President, for her family and community. And I also met Brendan, Efren and Tremaine, who are working at Woonan Maintenance Services at the tourist accommodation in town, so Lily Lagoon. They've employed 17 people there, President, and they're doing a terrific job. And through these real jobs, we're already seeing what the impact of RGED will be on individuals, businesses and their communities. And applications are actually open now, President, for round 2 of RGED. And I certainly encourage all eligible organisations from Cape York to the Kimberley and everywhere in between to apply.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Nampijinpa Price, first supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. What will the government publish first? How its Makarrata Commission will be structured, or how many Indigenous communities have access to clean drinking water?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinpa Price. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thanks, Senator Price, for the question. We've certainly focused very much on water security along with food security today. In terms of water security, President, we know that it's important not only to have good drinking water in our communities. Minister Plibersek has identified a number of communities, and I'm more than happy to provide the names of those communities to you. We have provided that in terms of not only the ability to build houses and live in their communities with good drinking water. We know that if we want to roll out our 30 dialysis units of 4 chairs across Australia, we need to have proper water functioning so that the dialysis units can be used. So I am very pleased to say and report to the Senate that we have a solid program and we are building on that program. And if we get the opportunity for a second term, President, we will continue to roll those out.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Nampijinpa Price, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, will there be funding for a Makarrata Commission in the upcoming budget?
Thank you, Senator Nampijinpa Price. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. And I thank the Senator for her questions. In fact, these are questions that I am asked at estimates and they have been responded to. We have spoke about Makarrata. And what I've said to the opposition, both in estimates and here in the Senate, is that there is a Senate inquiry currently underway, and it's important for us to see the outcome of that inquiry, President. And I have said that on the record here in the Senate and as well as at estimates.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Marielle Smith.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Women and the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Yesterday, the Minister announced an investment of more than $500 million to deliver more choice, lower costs and better healthcare for Australian women. What will this policy deliver for women, Minister, and how will it reduce their healthcare costs?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Smith for the question and acknowledge the huge input she has had into the policy that was announced on the weekend, and include all of my colleagues, particularly the women members of the federal government, the first majority women government in Australia's history, which we are incredibly proud of. And this announcement is the result of the work of many women, of all women in our caucus and many women around the country, where for the last 2 years Minister Jed Carney has been consulting with the Women's Health Advisory Council that she established on areas of unmet need or unaddressed need that needed further consideration by government. And with the work we've done on repairing the budget and getting rid of the waste and rorts of the former administration, we have been able to find over $500 million to prioritise women's health in this country. That will make a huge difference for hundreds of thousands of women right now, but millions of women as these changes go on. So we are seeing the new listing of the most commonly used contraceptive pills, Yaz and Yasmin, saving hundreds of dollars a year for a woman who's using that. The PBS listing of Prometrium, Estrogel and Estrogel Pro, common menopause hormone therapies, which will save women using those treatments up to $290 a year, or up to $577 if you have a concession card. These PBS listings will take effect from March 1st, just 3 weeks from today, meaning women will start to see those savings right away. And this is the first listing of new oral contraceptive to be listed in 30 years and the first new menopause hormone therapy to be listed in 20 years, and it's because of a Labor government.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Smith, first supplementary.
Minister, this package is what Australian women have been asking for, and I know it will make a real difference to hundreds of thousands of women right now. It's about more choice, lower costs and better care. Can you tell us, Minister, how will the Centres of Excellence and the pelvic pain and endo clinics further assist women?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Smith for the question and for her advocacy, particularly in relation to perimenopause and menopause services across the country. These new investment will expand the network of endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics from 22 to 33. They are incredibly popular, 11 new clinics in total. I know the one in the ACT already has a waiting list, so these are incredibly needed services. Existing clinics will receive increased funding, provide care for perimenopause and menopause, again due to the advocacy of the Senate work that Senator Smith did, creating a national network of 33 clinics providing support for women with perimenopause or menopause symptoms. And we know that these clinics work because the demand is so high. Since their commencement, there have been 7,452 visitations. We'll also have centres of excellence to make sure GP training, which is so critical to women receiving the support they need, close to where they live.
Has expired. Senator Marielle Smith, second supplementary.
Minister, these investments in women's health are just part of the priority focus that the Albanese Labor government has placed on addressing measures that support women. How does this package work in with the other investments in cost of living assistance that our government is making for women?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And Senator Smith is right. This women's health package is part of a broader piece of work that the Albanese government has prioritised, whether it be in women's safety, whether it be in sharing and valuing care and the care economy, whether it be women's wages, whether it be access to paid parental leave, obviously women's health with this incredibly important package, also in women's sport. We are coming at the to support women from every different way we can, because we know that when women get fair opportunity, it's better for the whole economy. Of course, that having investments in Medicare and the urgent care clinics are also really important, making sure bulk billing that we see a stop in the fall in bulk billing that we inherited from those opposite, have all been an important part of our focus on women, because we know when women are supported in the economy, the economy does better overall.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Little.
Thank you. Well, my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Labor's hesitancy to end mandatory income management in the Northern Territory became obvious when the member for Lingari spoke in favour of it, as she has done previously. Minister, has the government realised the benefit of mandatory income management and that it should never have promised to remove it?
Thank you, Senator Little. Senator Wong.
Thank you, President. I thank the senator for her question, and I'd invite the senator to refer to Senator McCarthy's contribution earlier today, which went through the approach the government is taking to closing the gap. And I would record, I would say to those opposite, it would. I know that it is probably a little too hopeful in this period of the electoral cycle, but it is very apparent to me the extent to which there is much less bipartisanship around the statements today than I've seen previously.
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Thank you, President. It is a point of order in relation to relevance. The question was quite specific. It was in relation to the benefit of mandatory income management and whether or not the government had now realised that benefit and whether or not they should. Just a point of order of relevance.
Thank you, Senator Cash. And you will recall that Minister Wong referred to Senator McCarthy's answer to previous questions, which did cover off on some of those things. But I will continue listening carefully, and if the minister is not relevant, I will draw her to that point. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. The Albanese government is delivering a long-term plan to reform income management. First Nations people and other stakeholders have called for a measured approach to reforming income management, and decisions must be made in partnership with them. I'm advised that over the last 2 years the government has consulted with about 4,500 community members and 250 stakeholders across 81 communities. Communities have told us that they would prefer a longer transition period to move on to voluntary income management to ensure people are well supported to make this change. I'm also advised that the government has been working in good faith with the Northern Territory government, and that the Prime Minister has had, or might have been the Minister actually, I think this is a brief from her, has had productive discussions with the Chief Minister. I understand that income management has not changed in the Northern Territory since the previous government, and the same rules around income management apply in the NT as has existed since 2007.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Little, first supplementary.
Thank you. Well, Prime Minister Albanese allowed the Northern Territory's grog ban to lapse, was distracted by the $450 million voice referendum, and at great human, social and economic cost, ended the cashless debit card. In an interview on ABC on Friday, the Prime Minister said his commitment was to ensure everything he does makes a positive difference. But words are not actions. Will your government end income management for 27,000 Territorians, or is the Prime Minister talking from both sides of his mouth again?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
Senator, that's an unnecessarily barbed comment on a really important issue, and I will answer the issue. And what I'd say to you, Senator, if I can just clarify, I'm advised that the information I provided just now was in fact information from the Minister for Social Services portfolio. I'm advised, as I said, income management hasn't changed in the Northern Territory. The same rules currently apply as has existed with 2007. The Northern Territory government has the ability to refer adults to income management if there are child protection concerns, and can refer someone to income management where there are concerns for the care, protection and welfare for the child. Importantly, this could include neglect, people under the Child Protection Measure have 70% of their payments quarantined. We're working with them closely in relation to that referral process.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Little, second supplementary.
On the
Senator Little, wait
Sorry?
until you call.
Thank you.
Second supplementary.
Apologies. Labor MPs on the Parliamentary Joint Committee into Human Rights recommended an end to all forms of income management in 2024. Minister Rishworth's department recently completed consultations on ending mandatory income management in the Northern Territory, yet the Prime Minister still says there are no plans to stop mandatory income management. Will your government end mandatory income management? Yes or no?
Thank you, Senator Little. Minister Wong.
Well, as I said earlier, we've indicated we are listening to communities about how income management can best work for them, and any decisions about the future of income management will be based on genuine consultation. I would have thought that, given what has been said by the many in—
Order. Senator Little.
Point of order. The question went to yes or no.
And there was a preamble to the question as well, Senator Little, which the Minister is entitled to respond to.
If we could have that.
Minister, please continue.
I'll say it again. We're committed to listening to communities on how income management can best work for them. And any— Senator Ruston, we can't stop interjecting, can you?
Minister Wong, please resume your seat. Senator Cash.
Point of order, Chair. With all due respect to the Leader of the Government, who loves to make points of order in relation to other people's behaviour, all points should go through the Chair, not directly across the chamber.
Senator Cash, order. Minister Wong did not make a point of order. She responded to an interjection, which, as you know, if you're on your feet answering questions— Sure, I'll take that point, but it was not a point of order, and I remind Senator Wong to make her comments to the Chair. Minister, please continue.
It wasn't worth a point of order, it was just a comment. But, President—
Order! Order!
Would you like me to keep going, President, or do they want to keep
you've
going?
got 18 seconds.
They don't want to hear the answer? That's fine.
Order! Senator Waters. Senator Waters, I'm sorry, resume your seat. Senator McGrath, I'm going to ask you to withdraw that comment, please. Thank you. And I'll call for order. Senator Waters is on her feet. Senator Waters.
Thanks, President. My question is to the Minister for Women and Finance, Minister Gallagher. I was pleased to see the Greens-initiated Senate inquiries and the persistent pressure from women across Australia have finally led to the government listing more modern contraceptive pills and some menopausal hormone therapies on the PBS. The Greens have already announced costed policies that would completely remove the financial burden for women and make all contraceptives free, like they are in France, Ireland and Sweden. We've announced costed policies to make all MHT free, like it is in parts of Canada and heavily subsidised in the UK. Why do Australian women still have to pay for the cost of existing? Why won't the Albanese government make contraceptives and MHT free?
Senator McKenzie. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Waters for the question. And I would like to acknowledge her long-standing work in this area. She has been a strong advocate for improving women's health in this country, and so I do acknowledge that. In government, obviously, there is a range of no shortage of ideas or policies that would warrant attention of government. What we've done with this is consult with women about the areas that they think the government should invest further in, and we've balanced that up with a whole range of other things the budget has to accommodate. And we have found that these measures, so listing of the new oral contraceptives, listing of the new of additional hormone replacement therapies, and doing those from the 1st of March, plus the rebates increasing for insertion of IUD and birth control implants, saving again hundreds of dollars for women with these costs. We've also got a new Medicare rebate of $110 for GP menopause health assessments, which will encourage, I think, GPs to bulk bill those longer sessions with women. And also, I should have said before, all of the 2 national trials into the pharmacy and how pharmacists can provide straightforward UTI care for people on concession card holders. So, with some of the other measures that I've already announced, this is a big package for women's health, and while we have costed it, we have also funded it. We're in a position in government to make that change. We've found $500 million that will make women's health care cheaper. It will provide better care, and it will ensure that there are more choices available for women in this country, and we are very proud of this policy.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Waters, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. The weekend's announcement sadly did nothing to address the affordability and accessibility of surgical abortions. There are still abortion deserts right across the country, especially in rural and regional areas, women travelling hundreds of kilometres and paying thousands to get this time-bound health care. It should be provided in public hospitals. Will the Albanese government return to its 2019 policy that demanded hospitals provide abortions as a condition of receiving Commonwealth funding?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much, and I thank Senator Waters for her question. And part of the work that we have done is to make sure that the area of responsibility we have, which is for ensuring that medical abortions are available, or non-surgical medical abortions are available through the dispensing of MS2 step. And we have seen, since some of those restrictions on health professionals have been removed, that we have seen significantly improved access for women to access non-surgical medical abortions. Obviously, our increased investment in this area in the Women's Health Package, including with encouraging long-acting contraceptive devices, is aimed at ensuring that more women get the protection that they need for them, so that we're reducing the number of women who would have to seek an abortion. And on the hospital point, we've taken the view that the states run the hospitals, and we need to fund the hospitals properly.
Has expired. Senator Waters, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. You say that providing surgical abortions in hospitals is up to states and territories, but Minister Butler recently demanded that the Queensland government not pause the prescription of puberty blockers for children and conduct a review into gender care. Why won't the Albanese government do the same and intervene to demand access to surgical abortions in public hospitals?
Thank you, Senator Waters. Minister Gallagher.
Well, I think those are two different things. Minister Butler has asked the NHMRC to consider national guidelines in relation to puberty blockers. Hospitals already provide access to surgical termination of pregnancy where they have the workforce and the skill to be able to provide it. Now, we do not operate the hospitals. We do not dictate where workforce for those hospitals go or the range of services that they provide. And there are many services in this country in smaller hospitals that aren't able to provide a full suite of services. That is the reality of operating 700 hospitals across a very, very big country. And for example, here in the ACT, most abortions are performed by a clinic where they are free for women, and there are a range of different alternatives around the country. But our position has been to fund the hospitals properly, and then the hospital operators are in the best position to determine what services they provide.
Senator Stewart.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator McCarthy. The Albanese Labor government today released its Closing the Gap annual report and implementation plan. While there is great progress being made, there is still more to do. What steps is the government taking in partnership with First Nations communities, organisations and state and territory governments to deliver real change?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Stewart for your question and for your role and leadership on helping develop the economic strategy for us. So the Albanese Labor government is delivering, President, action and working in partnership with First Nations communities, peak bodies and state and territory governments to close the gap. And one of our key priorities is job creation in remote Australia. We have commenced the Remote Jobs and Economic Development Program, which will create up to 3,000 jobs in remote communities over the next 3 years. We've also expanded the Indigenous Rangers program, creating 1,000 new jobs, including 770 positions for First Nations women. On housing, we're delivering real action. We've built more than 200 new homes in remote Northern Territory communities, working towards our 10-year goal to halve overcrowding. We're ensuring First Nations children have a strong start in life by expanding the Connected Beginnings program to 50 communities, supporting early childhood development for 20% of First Nations children. Already over 20,000 students are involved. Additionally, we are taking action to keep families safe. We've significantly increased funding for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander legal services and family violence prevention legal services to assist more women and children escaping domestic and family violence. And we've invested in community-led justice reinvestment initiatives in 27 sites across the country. It's clear the difference our investments are making on the ground, and yes, of course, we need to continue to keep going. Like the Australian Family Partnership Program in South East Queensland, where more than 93% of First Nations babies have been born within a healthy birth weight range, beating the target of 91%.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Stewart, first supplementary.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Minister, for that response. The Albanese Labor government's report shows the government is making significant investments in jobs, food security and housing for First Nations communities. What are the key measures our government will deliver in the year ahead to build on our progress and continue closing the gap?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, we're continuing to build on our strong foundations, and our focus is on easing cost of living pressures in remote communities, strengthening economic empowerment and improving key outcomes for First Nations people. In 2025, President, we will invest $842 million in essential services in the Northern Territory, end freight costs on 30 essential household items in 76 remote stores, making prices fairer for First Nations remote communities, building a nutrition workforce by upskilling 120 local First Nations staff in remote stores, rolling out 12 new laundries in remote communities to improve long-term health outcomes, strengthening the Indigenous procurement policy to create more opportunities for First Nations businesses, and boosting Indigenous Business Australia's Home Loan Capital Fund, helping more First Nations Australians buy their own home and build intergenerational
Thank you, Minister.
wealth.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Stewart, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. It is clear the Albanese Labor government is focused on taking action to improve outcomes for First Nations people so that all Australians have the same opportunities in life. How important is it to have bipartisan support to achieve the goals of closing the gap?
Thank you, Senator Stewart. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. It's incredibly important, President. When I took on the role 6 months ago, it's something that has been really important for me personally, as well as professionally in the role as Minister, to continually reach out across the Parliament and try to find a common path amongst the different thoughts and different views that we have to work together on closing the gap. We have all signed up to the agreement, and as I said in my statement, that the previous Prime Minister had put to the Parliament, along with Ken Wyatt as Indigenous Australians Minister, and every single government across the country signed up to it. Every single parliament across the country signed up to it. And it is imperative, President, that we do try to work together on this. And I am concerned when I hear those opposite talk about cuts and cuts and cuts, and not being able to reveal that until after the next election. Where are those cuts going to be?
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, does the mechanism for the mutual recognition of qualifications between India and Australia give equal merit to an Indian degree in Australia as an Australian degree in Australia?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President, and thank you to Senator Roberts for the question. I will see what additional information I can get for you in relation to mutual recognition. I'm hoping that the appropriate portfolio finds some information for me. But can I say generally that we have a number... Thank you for the advice. I appreciate it. Very helpful, Senator. But, Senator, there are a number of economic agreements and other partnerships where we do have mutual recognition schemes with other jurisdictions, and obviously the safety of consumers remains something that is paramount. I can't recall to this moment whether or not that is delivered through the mutual recognition schemes themselves or separate registration schemes for particular professions, for example, such as the health professions, but I'll certainly find more advice for you and provide you with that. I'm assuming it's the health sector that you are most interested in, but maybe you can clarify.
Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
All degrees. Indian universities have a substantial problem with cheating and with degrees being sold for as little as 3,700 Australian dollars. Indian criminals are establishing ghost colleges in Australia. The Australian Skills Quality Authority acknowledged this in 2019. Minister, will there be any attempt to recognise qualifications on the basis of the originating institution or some other system for verifying the legitimacy of the qualification, especially in critical areas such as health services and engineering?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Wong.
Thank you, Senator. Well, that I think covers a number of portfolios. Certainly in relation to vocational colleges and so forth, you would have heard the Minister and I think the representing Minister here speak about the importance of better regulating the sector and some of our forms in relation to international students and international education go to the issue of making sure that here in Australia students can attain high-quality degrees or high-quality qualifications. But in relation to, I think you said engineering and health, again, I will see what we can find for you. My recollection is that these arrangements between countries, which might give pathways to recognition, are one thing, but the requirements of particular professions to ensure that people have the requisite qualifications to be able to provide the relevant services to consumers remain.
Has expired. Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. I simply need, Minister, to get the government's logic straight. Are you saying we don't have the places to train our own graduates because we have 500,000 foreign students occupying those places, who will then take their degree back home, and so we have to bring in Indian graduates to get the skills we need? Minister, wouldn't it just be easier to reduce foreign students and educate more of our own children?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Wong.
Well, Senator, the government's view is that you need a vibrant, world-class, high-quality higher education sector. You do that in many ways, including by making sure they are appropriately funded. We do that also by making sure that there is some consideration to the mix of domestic and overseas students. And you would have seen the government has announced caps in relation to international students, and that is in part recognition of both the quality of education provided to them as well as to the broader student community. So I think it is important to have both. But I would make the point that this is an important export industry. We are able to earn income for Australians, which we can then ensure is invested wisely. So, there is a reason Australia is an open and trading nation, and that is it has grown our economy. But we are seeking to reduce the number of international students over time.
Senator Cadell.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Minister Wong. According to reports in today's Australian paper, Prime Minister Albanese is planning to tell the Australian Industry Group that he strongly values the mining sector in Australia, despite the government spending the last 2 years attacking it from all sides. Given the Prime Minister is now wanting to appear pro-mining, will he now promise Australians that he will permanently abandon the government's so-called nature-positive laws and they will not be reintroduced after the election should your government be returned?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Wong.
This legislation will not be reintroduced, and I think you would have seen the Prime Minister's views on that. We are committed, obviously, to law reform, which I would point out was the Samuels review initiated by the former Liberal government because business and environment groups have agreed that the current Act is outdated and needs reform. Unfortunately, your side of politics, other parts of this chamber are very obstructionist. So
Order.
What we do want is to see greater consensus across business, NGOs and states to ensure that we can deliver laws which deliver faster project approvals and better environmental protection, and that is certainly the view of the government and the approach we will be taking.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cadell, first supplementary.
President, given the Prime Minister's wanting to appear pro-mining, will he now commit to reversing the Environmental Minister's decision on McPhillamys gold mine in New South Wales, which was a project that was endorsed by a local community, the resources sector, the Australian Workers' Union and the New South Wales Labor Government?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Wong. Senator McKenzie.
Senator, my recollection is that that is a decision under the law and a decision which is appropriately a decision of Minister Plibersek as the responsible minister who has certain statutory powers. So I think I and others have responded to that. I'm advised, in fact, that the company has commenced legal proceedings in the federal court, so obviously I'm not in a position to comment any further. I would say we have been really very clear about our support for the mining industry, which employs many hundreds of thousands of Australians, and the minister has approved some 40 mining projects and has doubled the rate of on-time approvals since coming to government.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cadell, second supplementary.
Given that it remains your government's ability to reverse the refusal of that mine, and that the nature-positive laws, if not coming back in the same form, there is a threat of similar laws coming back under a different guise, how can the Prime Minister plan in your government to the AIG tonight that it will be pro-mining and get Australian resources back on track?
Thank you, Senator Cadell. Minister Wong.
I think, with respect, that was quite a confused question, and what I'd invite the senator, to do is, therefore, when we are providing production tax credits for the mining sector, which will particularly benefit WA, but not only, and I assume that vote will be coming up later today. Maybe the test for you, Senator, if you are pro-mining, is for you to cross the floor and actually vote with us for production tax credits for the mining sector. And if you don't, you and your colleagues will be demonstrated for what you are. You're prepared to play politics, but not actually to put your money where your mouth is.
Order. Order. I draw to the attention of honourable senators the presence in the chamber of the Honourable Willie Tukatake, Speaker of the Parliament of Kiribati. On behalf of all senators, I wish you a warm welcome to Australia and in particular to the Senate. Senator Cox.
My question is for the Minister for Indigenous Australians, Senator McCarthy. Today, the Prime Minister spoke about learning from the injustices and mistakes of the past in his Closing the Gap statement. The 2023 referendum on a Voice to Parliament highlighted the need for truth-telling to combat the misinformation peddled by the Coalition and continues to be the political football and culture wars of those campaigning for their seats in the federal 2025 election. Minister, why is your government abandoning the important 2022 commitment you made to federal processes for truth-telling and treaties which are actually able to unite and heal this country?
Thank you, Senator Cox. Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Cox. Well, as I answered in my previous response to Senator Price, but perhaps the Senate didn't hear me, I have said on numerous occasions in regards to our next steps, we have never moved away from the principles of the Uluru Statement from the Heart, President, and what we are waiting for is the Senate inquiry that Senator Cox is a part of. along with Senator Stewart and many other senators here. We know that we want to hear in terms of what the Australian people have to say through that Senate inquiry, and I'm looking forward to seeing what recommendations come from that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, first supplementary.
Previously, the government allocated a budget line item for the establishment of a federal Makarrata Commission, which you previously campaigned for in opposition. Minister, what is your government's plan in relation to the implementation of the outstanding elements of the Statement from the Heart and its relationship to closing the gap for First Nations people?
Thank you, Senator Cox. Senator McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Cox. Well, we campaigned on a lot of issues in the 2022 election, President. We campaigned to get rid of CDP. We campaigned to go to a referendum, which we did.
Order.
We campaigned on many things that those opposite still do not support. And we have come into this term knowing that cost of living has been an incredibly important area for all Australians, and we've worked on that. While those opposite, mind you, President, have not even voted in favour.
Minister McCarthy, please resume your seat. Senator Cox.
Point of order, President. The question, if you can draw the minister to that, was the allocated budget line item for federal Makarrata.
Thank you, Senator Cox. I will draw the minister back to the question. Minister.
Thank you, President. So, in terms of the question by Senator Cox, as I said in my previous response, we have not moved away from the principles of the Uluru Statement from the Heart. We are genuinely waiting to see the outcome of the inquiry that was put forward to this Senate by Senator Cox.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cox, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. The Australian Greens national polling on truth and justice highlights that at least 30% of Australians are not even aware that truth-telling, because it's not in our educational curriculum and its importance to First Nations people and the history of this country. Will your government vote for the Greens federal Truth and Justice Bill when it's finished inquiry and comes into the chamber for voting?
Thank you, Senator Cox. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Well, I understand that the inquiry has received hundreds of submissions so far, Senator Cox, and I certainly understand that you've held a number of hearings across the country, and we will, like we do with all reports by senators in this place, we will wait until your recommendation comes to the Senate, and we'll obviously wait to see what Australians are saying to the inquiry.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Green.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Management, Senator McAllister. Minister, over the last week we have seen ongoing flooding and severe weather impacting communities across North Queensland. I know the Prime Minister joined you in North Queensland last week in visiting affected communities. Can the Minister update the Senate on the current situation?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister McAllister.
Well, thank you, Senator Green, and thank you also for your commitment to the people of North Queensland. Last week I was able to witness firsthand the incredible efforts of our first responders as they helped the people of North Queensland who were impacted by severe rain and by flooding. Emergency service workers, energy and telco workers, council staff and volunteers. And I want to also thank our ADF personnel. They stepped in, assisting by knocking on doors, but they have also done an extraordinary job supporting the recovery, including the construction of a temporary bridge on the Bruce Highway at Olera Creek and the resupply of communities using helicopter assets. Now, I was joined by Prime Minister Albanese, by the Queensland Premier, Mr Crisafulli, and local mayors in the Queensland Disaster Management Committee, a terrific example of collaboration and political leadership, people coming together from every level to support our communities in crisis. I want to acknowledge those mayors. They have led their communities, often while managing challenges in their own homes and in their own workplaces. The situation in North Queensland remains dynamic and challenging. This is not over, and we are asking people to think very carefully about their own safety and the safety of their communities. Local conditions could change rapidly. Flood warnings are in place in catchments across the region. It is important that people stay informed of local conditions and follow the advice of authorities. As the situation develops, we will stand by Queensland communities. We will provide practical support in their recovery. I want to make some remarks to Senator about the national situation. In addition to what is happening in Queensland, we are monitoring a tropical low in Western Australia, as well as a number of bushfires that are burning across parts of Victoria, Tasmania and West Australia. I thank all of those involved in recent weeks and months and all those who stand ready to support communities.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Green, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. I know the Albanese Labor government is working closely with the Queensland government to respond and to support communities in North Queensland to recover and to build back better. Could the minister update the chamber on the support available to affected communities?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President. Well, many Queenslanders have experienced a very difficult week and they are now facing the daunting task of cleaning up their homes and their communities. Our first priority is people. Senator Gallagher and I have announced the Australian Government disaster recovery payments and the disaster recovery allowance for several of the worst impacted communities. Though through jointly funded payments with the Queensland Government, we are also activating other measures, including personal hardship assistance payments, and thousands of Queenslanders have already been supported through this hardship support, and many more will continue to access this over the coming days and weeks. For primary producers, small businesses and not-for-profits, we have activated concessional loans in the hardest-hit local government areas. Now, local governments are at the coalface of the response. In addition to the local government support for counter-disaster operations, we have established an $8 million community relief fund to support a number of councils. Recovery will take time and we will be there with Queensland.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Green, second supplementary.
Thank you, Minister. I know all senators are appreciative of the work that emergency services personnel do in these times of crisis and all the work they do to help communities prepare, respond and recover. With increasingly severe and frequent crises, how has the Albanese Labor government backed frontline workers and worked to improve the capacity of government to support emergency management?
Thank you, Senator Green. Minister McAllister.
Well, thanks, President. Emergency service personnel around Australia are responding to floods, to heat waves, to bushfires and to severe weather conditions, and I want to acknowledge the work that they do all year round. These are Australians that are rightly proud of their public service, and they should know that they have a government that is proud of them. States and territories lead in these circumstances, but we want to be good partners to the states and territories. We have increased the National Aerial Firefighting Fleet to include 3 heavy lift and multi-use helicopters alongside the large air tanker. We have invested in the National Emergency Stockpile. It includes resources that states can use when they need them, including emergency housing, large generators, water filtration and purification equipment, water pumps and flood barriers. We are investing in disaster risk reduction through our Disaster Ready Fund to help communities better prepare for future disasters, and these are practical measures that we are taking to protect Australians and support these incredible personnel.
Thank you, Minister.
That work in
The time
this
for
sector.
answering has expired. Senator Hume.
Thank you, Madam President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, independent analysis from the Parliamentary Budget Office has shown that Labor's budget assumes that the public service will decrease by more than 20,000 over 4 years from the 1st of July 2025 compared to the current level of 209,150.
Order.
The PBO has calculated that it will cost the budget an additional $11.1 billion to retain
I'm
these
sorry,
public
Senator
servants.
Hume. Please resume your seat. Senators on my right. I can barely hear Senator Hume. Senator Hume, please continue.
Thank you, Madam President. The PBO has calculated that it will cost the budget an additional $11.1 billion to retain these public servants, money that the government has not budgeted for. Minister, on behalf of the Prime Minister, can you confirm that the government has not yet decided to keep the public service at its current level? Or do you have an $11 billion black hole?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Wong.
Thank you, President. Well, I'm very happy to take this question from the Shadow Minister for Finance. She obviously is so worried about how well Senator Gallagher will answer the question that she isn't prepared to put the question to the minister she shadows, and I can understand why. I'm also happy to take a question from the Shadow Minister for Finance about APS job cuts, given her policy is 36,000 jobs to go, given that's the policy that she is advocating. And I'm also happy to take a question from the Shadow Minister for Finance for a party that took jobs out of the Department of Veterans Affairs, which left veterans without the support they deserved. Some 42,000 veterans with unallocated claims that you presided over because you weren't prepared to fund the Department of Veterans Affairs. So, these are just some of the highlights of the way in which those opposites have no credibility when it comes to these issues. And every question from them on this and every utterance from the Shadow Minister for Finance should be taken with a very large grain of salt. I would make this point. The exact same methodologies are employed to forecast wages and salaries in our budgets as occurred under the former government. Entities make forecasts on how much of their departmental budget will be spent on wages and salaries, and these entity forecasts are aggregated into the budget document. So, I know that the Shadow Minister for Finance wants a bit of spooky music to try to get some headline, but the reality is the big black hole is the one Mr Dutton is presiding over, with his $600 billion black hole for the nuclear fantasy that he wants to impose on Australians.
Has expired. Order across the chamber. Order. Senator Hume, first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam President. The analysis by the PBO confirms that the government has either been deliberately dishonest in hiding the true cost to retain this bloated public service, or Labor's budget is not credible. The minister states that these figures reflect decisions that have not been taken, but then states that the public service will remain at current levels under Labor. Can you confirm, Minister, that the Prime Minister has decided to keep the public service at current levels?
Thank you, Senator Hume. Minister Wong.
Well, I'm a little I think all of us are a little bemused at which line the Shadow Minister of Finance is actually running. Is she saying the public service is too big or too small? It's an interesting. They want to have it both ways. But I mean, what we do know is they want Mr Dutton wants to remove some 36,000 jobs, and we know what Liberal governments have previously done when it comes to the public service. We also know what's in the budget papers, and either the Shadow Minister for Finance is unable to read the budget papers properly, or she is deliberately misleading about what she is being deliberately misleading about what those budget papers contain. And what I'd say to her is that these are the same methodologies that governments past have used in relation to the forecasting of wages and salaries.
Minister Wong,
I'm sorry if you can't understand
Minister
that,
Wong,
Senator Hume.
please resume your seat. Order. Senator Hume.
Sorry. Point of order.
Sorry, Senator Hume. Senator McKenzie, come to order. Senator McGrath. Senator Hume.
Point of order on relevance. The question was, have you decided to keep the public service at current levels? That's it.
The minister is being relevant to your question, Senator Hume. Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Wong, please. Senator McKenzie, withdraw, and Senator McGrath, withdraw.
I withdraw.
Minister, please continue. Minister,
Senator, what I'd say to you is I think Senator Gallagher responded very, very clearly and very well on this in Insiders yesterday with excellent.
Senator Hume, second supplementary.
Thank you. Yesterday, in relation to the size of the public service, the Minister for Finance stated that she believed, "I think we've resourced it properly now." Yet, the PBO costing confirms in Labor's own budget that the budget will assume a reduction in the APS that the minister has in fact ruled out. Given the Prime Minister has committed to being honest about his budgets, how does he explain this shoddy deception?
Order. Order on my right. Order on my right. Minister Gallagher. Order. Order on my right. Minister Wong.
President, the the political exercise by the opposition ignores that the approach to APS wages is exactly the same as it was under 9 long years of LNP government. It's calculated in the same way. But if the Shadow Minister for Finance actually is a fiscal conservative, I look forward to her telling Australians where the $350 billion reduction is going to come from, where those cuts are going to come from. We think they're probably health and education, judging by past practice, and I look forward to her being up front with the Australian people about the $600 billion to be spent on the nuclear fantasy. Because the reality is, we know Mr Dutton has said very clearly that he is going to cut, but what he won't say to Australians is what he's going to cut. And we know from past practice, Liberals always cut health and education.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon. Senator Sheldon.
My question is to the Minister for Employment and Workplace Relations, Senator Watt. When speaking with workers across my home state of New South Wales, I often hear the Albanese Labor government's workplace relations reforms have helped them deal with the cost of living pressures. How is our government policies helping Australians earn more and keep more of what they earn? And why is investing in secure, well-paid jobs so critical to building Australia's future?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Senator Sheldon. Well, since May 2022, the Albanese Labor government has worked hard to lift wages to keep up with cost of living pressures. Our workplace relations changes are designed to lift wages, create more secure jobs and ease cost of living pressures for working Australians. And after a decade of the Liberals and Nationals deliberately keeping workers' wages low, this government sees pay rises and secure jobs as integral to addressing the cost of living. The proof is in the pudding. Wages are rising at the fastest rate in more than 4 years, with real wages growing for 4 consecutive quarters, 12 months after falling under the coalition. Little bit of a worry that the Shadow Minister for Finance doesn't understand the concept of real wages, but maybe that's why they deliberately kept real wages low. Over 1 million jobs have been created since we came to office, 4 in 5 in the private sector. And the gender pay gap is at its lowest level ever, with women's average weekly earnings increasing $173.80 a week under this government. So under our government, under Labor, wages are up, inflation is down and unemployment remains low. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens by changing the law, changing the laws in ways that the coalition voted against every step of the way. Now, we've seen what the coalition have got in store for the future, and we saw more of it on the weekend. Just on the weekend, we saw Senator Cash doubling down on Sky News, confirming the coalition will repeal the right to disconnect and the changes we've made to the definition of casual work. Sound familiar? Of course, Senator Cash is on the record saying that, quote, "Those on the coalition side of the chamber will always stand with the employers of Australia." The fact is that the Liberals and Nationals are for big business, not for the average working Australian. You will be worse off under Peter Dutton and the coalition.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Sheldon, first supplementary.
I note that Senator Cash has said that the right to disconnect is an act of complete contempt, and that Mr Dutton would repeal it if elected. How is the right to disconnect helping end unpaid overtime? And why is it so important Australian workers retain the right to disconnect?
Thank you, Senator Sheldon. Minister Watt.
Well, thank you, President. Thanks, Senator Sheldon. I know the coalition has had difficulty getting its head around the concept of the right to disconnect. So let me again explain what it's about. It's about ensuring that workers are not required to respond to work emails and messages outside of their paid hours of work. So it's about reducing unfair, unpaid overtime. And of course, the right to disconnect is only one of many, many, many changes to the laws that we've made that the coalition voted against. Now, I think that change seems fairly reasonable to most working Australians. Of course, Senator Hume described adding more rights for workers is unreasonable. Unreasonable, Senator Hume said. Well, last year I spoke to a teacher here in the ACT, Jacob, who said that the right to disconnect actually allows us to have our own personal life. And so the right to disconnect, what it allows us to do is make sure we actually look after our well-being. How unreasonable of workers like Jacob to want to look after their well-being. Under Peter Dutton, you will be worse off.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Sheldon, second supplementary.
Over the weekend, Senator Cash said that additional rights for workers have sent a chilling effect across the economy, stating that Mr Dutton would seek to repeal them if elected. Why did the Albanese Labor government legislate more rights for casual workers, and how would casual workers be worse off if those rights were withdrawn?
Minister Watt.
Thanks, Senator Sheldon. Well, we do know that Senator Cash is a little bit prone to a little bit of hyperbole. Dark ages, Senator Cash, closing down Australia, Senator Cash, empty supermarket shelves, Senator Cash, and now chilling effect, Senator Cash. Unfortunately for Senator Cash, as I've said, under Labor, after our workplace law changes, we've seen wages go up, we've seen inflation go down, we've seen unemployment remain low, we've seen employment go up, we've seen productivity rise, and of course we've seen industrial action low. That doesn't sound particularly chilling to me. Maybe it is too. It does sound a lot like the Dark Ages, doesn't it, Senator Cash? And the Albanese Labor government changes mean that casuals working like permanent employees will have a clearer pathway to permanency and the job security that provides. If a worker wants to remain a casual employee, that's a legitimate choice, but we know some workers want more job security, and that choice shouldn't be removed by an employer who wants to call them casual when they're really permanent. That's the way the law will stay under Labor, under the Liberals and Coalition. It will change for the worse.
Has expired. Minister Wong.
President, I ask that further questions be placed on notice.